first National Trans Visibility March took place on September 28, 2019 in Washington, D.C. With over 5,300 attendees, this historic event brought together both transgender individuals and allies from all over the United States.
We are tired of fighting for our country on foreign soil and then being told that we are no longer fit to serve. We are tired of our murders going without any justice and our murderers out there free. We want to be free, and that's why we are here.
I want you to repeat after me. I am here. I am here. Yes, ma'am.
We need to take back our narrative. We are not victims. We are not statistics. We are not tragedies. We are waiting to thrive, and this is our best year yet, because we aren't here simply to be visible. We are here to be victorious. So when we move forward today, let us press forward with purpose, let us press forward with passion, and let us know that the fight has just begun.
Good afternoon, everybody, and how are we? My name is Marissa Miller, and I am working today in partnership with my colleagues from Napo Pharmaceuticals, Eric Jones and Brian S. Eric and Brian, can you say hello to everybody as we get started?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming out.
And Erica, you're going to have to learn how to work that mute button. Today, So listen, we're going to talk today about shitting. We're going to talk about using the restroom. We're going to talk about diarrhea, and we're going to dive right into it. We're going to talk about mytesi. We're going to talk about restoring. We're going to talk about relief. And we're going to talk about reducing HIV-related stigma, HIV-related diarrhea for the long term. What is mytesi? Mytesi is a prescription medication that helps relieve symptoms of diarrhea not caused by an infection in adults living with HIV. Antiretroviral therapy. Next slide, Danny. Important safety information. Indications and usage. Mytesi is indicated for symptomatic relief of non-infectious diarrhea in adult patients with HIV on antiretroviral therapy. Important safety information. Mytesi is not approved to treat infectious diarrhea. That's diarrhea caused by bacteria, a virus, or parasite. Before starting on mytesi, your healthcare provider will first be sure that you do not have infectious diarrhea. Otherwise, there's a risk you will not receive the right medication and your infection could get worse. So make sure you check with your physician. In clinical studies, the most common side effects that occurred more often with placebo were upper respiratory tract, sinus, nose, and throat infection, 6% bronchitis, 4% cough, flatulence 3%, and increased bilirubin. I guess I pronounced that right, Brian. Did I pronounce that right? Next slide, Danny. So let's rethink. It's time to rethink differently about chronic diarrhea as its treatment. Next slide. 1 in 5 people living with HIV experience chronic diarrhea. Next slide, please. Different types of stools can indicate different problems. You see in constipation, 1, separate hard lumps like nuts. That's what it will look like in the stool. 2, it's the lumpy and sausage-like. Normal stool is a sausage-like shape with cracks in the surface. Number 4, normal is like a smooth, soft like sausage or snail. Diarrhea, 5, soft blobs and clear-cut edges. Give me one moment, please. You have to do it with the kids sometimes. Listen, we're in COVID-19 and we're working from home, and the kids aren't in daycare and they are not listening today. And so look, 5 is the soft blobs with clear-cut edges. 6 is mushy consistency with ragged edges. And number 7 is liquid consistency with no solid pieces. There we go. Mytesi is the only FDA-approved treatment for non-infectious diarrhea for people living with HIV. Mytesi is for adults who are living with HIV, who are experiencing diarrhea not caused by infection. We talked about in the last slide that there are different types of diarrhea. We're talking about experiencing diarrhea that is not caused by infection, and someone that is taking antiretroviral therapies, which are ARTs. Next slide. HIV-related diarrhea can be caused by HIV itself or its treatment, and that's the ART treatment. So in this graph right here, you see a normal bowel. You see the GI tract maintains a balance of salts and water that allows a normal stool formation. You see the little green dots tell us where the salt is at. And then right in those little grooves, if you see those little lines right there, those are salt channels. And then you see the brown around the salt channels are our gut linings, the linings to our gastric system. And then the other portions in there are the water. That's what a normal GI tract looks like. Can we go to the next slide? If you look at this slide right here, HIV and its treatment can cause damage to your gut. Taking most of the drugs that we take are not as good for us as we want them to be. They help us stay alive, but they don't always treat our body well. So HIV and its treatment can cause the damage to the gastro tract, creating inflammation and a leaky gut. This can result in an imbalance of those salts that we talked about. Remember, the salts are the little green dots in your GI tract, leading to diarrhea. So look at this tract right here. You see how the salt and the water fluids are inflamed in that area. And that is what we see when we talk about diarrhea. Next slide. So Mytesi lump. Erica, can you take that slide for me real quick?
Erica, you're on mute.
Yes, thank you, Marissa. So, like Marissa said, in the diarrhea, you could also kind of see where it has an increase in salt as well as water, but you can also see the red outline, which indicates inflammation or damage to the GI tract. And this last illustration here shows you the effects of Mytesi on the GI tract. And as you can see here, Danny, I don't know if you can kind of blow it out a little bit like you did just before. Yeah, there you go. So you can kind of see on this last slide, you see Mytesi, which are indicated by the little look like M&Ms with red. So that indicates Mytesi. But as you can also see, there's a reduction in water as well as salts. So what Mytesi does, it just kind of restores the balance in a person's GI tract, which is going to certainly lead to a decrease in diarrhea, which certainly provides the relief that Marissa had spoke about a little bit earlier. Marissa, you want me to toss the ball back to you?
Yes, you can. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next slide, Danny. That's one of the benefits of having a good partnership. When you've done this 1,000 times, you can pass the ball and then pick the ball back up. Mytesi is a tablet taken twice a day. Now, Mytesi is not effective if it's not taken twice a day. One Mytesi 125 milligram delayed release tablet is taken 2 times each day. You can take it with or without food. Mytesi should not be crushed or chewed. So it's not one of those pills. If you have problems swallowing pills, try to get it down your throat. It doesn't work if you crush it and put it in fluids. Tablets should be swallowed whole. Next slide. Results. What may you expect from taking Mytesi? Next slide, Danny. So let me tell you before we really get to this slide right here. Maybe 5 years ago, I was in Chicago. I was experiencing like huge problems with diarrhea. And so I thought that it was the diarrhea that we had talked about in the beginning, the one that was caused by infection. And so I went to my doctor, and my doctor had given me loperamide, little capsules. You take them after each stool. And so I was active. I was in a relationship. I had a friend. I wasn't able to be, as active as I want to be with my partner. And I was like, well, what am I doing wrong? What am I eating wrong? And I went to my doctor. But before I went to my doctor, I had went to a presentation. I was at the United States Conference on AIDS, and I went to a presentation on Mytesi. Had no idea that there was another medication that would help me. And so I listened to the presentation. After the presentation was over, I contacted a great guy that is no longer with Mytesi about what I was going through. And so he told me what to tell my provider. So I went to my provider. Needless to say, 5 years later, I've been on Mytesi twice a day, and I have not experienced any of those gastro cramps. Those cramps like you feel in the bottom of your stomach, like, you might have a stomach ache. Well, those were gastro problems for me. And so I went to my physician, and they provided Mytesi for me. So I wanted to share that with you, that I'm not just talking about Mytesi because I have not, because I'm just talking about a presentation. I'm sharing with you something that has actually saved my life. And so Mytesi, as I said, is the only FDA-approved treatment for chronic diarrhea studied specifically for people living with HIV. 3 clinical trials included 696 people living with HIV who had diarrhea for 1 month or more were on HIV treatment. Participants received either Mytesi 2 times a day or a placebo sugar tablet, which is called a double-arm study. Participants were 15% of the participants were female, and 85% were male, 22% were other demographic, 46% were Caucasian, and 32% were African American. Next slide. People who took Mytesi had fewer watery stools. After 20 weeks of Mytesi, 9 out of the 10 people that were in that particular study had fewer watery stools than before. So they were taking the Mytesi twice a day as prescribed. And after 20 weeks of being on the Mytesi and taking it twice a day, they had fewer watery stools than before. Brian, I see you took yourself off mute. You want to talk a little bit about that?
No, I'm good. That's okay.
And over half had no watery stools. So again, it only works if you take it as prescribed. That means you have to take it twice a day in order for it to be effective. Next slide, Danny. By week 8, Mytesi treated patients on an average 63% reduction in the number of watery stools from the beginning of the baseline. So let's look at this graph and let's start. Reduction in the number of watery stools over time in Mytesi treated patients. So when you look at the average change from the baseline, you see how the percentage goes down. In the beginning, 29% of the individuals were, Brian, take this part from me, because I'm gonna this part of it. This part is so
So
important.
essentially, in the first week, there was a 29% reduction in over the entire group of patients that were in the trial. So that doesn't mean that one person had a 29% reduction. It means that if I took all of the number of water stools in this study at week 1, there was a reduction of 29%. Now, that's important to understand because in some patients, that damage that Marissa talked about earlier is more significant than in other patients. And we don't know from patient to patient whose stomach is really torn up and whose stomach is just a little irritated. And so one of the things that you really need to give Mytesi is some patience and some time. If you follow that red line down, you can see the number of watery stools continues to decrease. So one of the things that Marissa had mentioned is that at 20 weeks, over half of the patients had no watery stools at all. So 100% resolution. And, when we talk to different clinicians about this, gastroenterologists really find that to be pretty impressive because it's very difficult to jump in front of a moving train and stop it completely. So it's important to keep in mind, one, you want to stay on the product. Marissa did a great job of explaining, if I'm feeling better and I stop, the damage to your GI lining, to your stomach, is still there, to your intestines. And so we would expect your diarrhea to return, right? Because Mytesi isn't curing the damage, it's working with the systems we were all born with to regulate them back to normal so we don't have as many watery stools. And so the longer patients stayed on it, the better their response. So one of the things really to keep in mind is week one, somebody might say, I didn't really see the result I was expecting. This is not an anti-motility. So if you probably have ever taken loperamide or Lamodal or Imodium, those actually are used to treat acute diarrhea. I ate some bad food, I caught a stomach bug from somebody on the bus, whatever the case may be, they're used in a short term only to help you control your diarrhea until the bug is dead, right? Until your body can get rid of the virus. In the case of HIV, our bodies can't fully get rid or fully eradicate the virus. So our immune system causes this inflammation and it stays with us day after day after day. And that being said, it's a long-term treatment. Whereas the anti-motility drugs that you may have tried in the past are designed and expected to be used only for a couple days. That make sense?
It makes perfect sense. Thank you so much, colleague. Next slide, Danny. Most other prescription diarrhea medications like Lamodal, and I won't even try to go through that, and loperamide, hydrochloride, work by slowing down the GI tract, while Mytesi works by balancing salts and water. So as Brian so eloquently explained, the diarrhea that we feel like maybe we've had a bad sandwich at a bad shop, or maybe there's a bug that we caught, the regular medication will do that, but Mytesi works by balancing the salt and water, and it only works with GI infection, GI tract infections. If you look at this graph right here, it shows you the things that each of these drugs are capable of doing. Treats diarrhea symptoms, targets the result of HIV-related gut damage. Now you see none of the other two medications even do anything if there is gut damage. Low risk of constipation. Only Mytesi does that. Simple dosing. Only Mytesi has a simple dosing. You take it twice a day. With the other two, sometimes you have to take them after each stool, and sometimes you're taking up to 20 and 30 sometimes, and that's really not good. There's no warning regarding the cardiovascular risk in the other two. And Mytesi is the only one that has been studied with people living with HIV. There's no precaution regarding driving or operating machinery. I don't know if a lot of people know that the other two are opiate. They have opiate bases in them. And so for those that are in recovery, even that is something to consider. Mytesi is all pure and made from a plant. So Mytesi has been a winner for me. And like I said, if you're just experiencing those little small bouts of diarrhea that maybe you ate something bad or maybe you ate something too spicy, we're not suggesting Mytesi for you. Mytesi is when you experience that diarrhea that just doesn't go anywhere, that gut-wrenching pain that just doesn't go anywhere. That is when we suggest that you talk to your primary care doctor about diarrhea, or even talk to your HIV provider. And listen, remember that you are in charge of your care. When we walk into places of care, we are in charge of our care. So if you choose Mytesi as being something after you realize it's something that will help you, then don't let your provider tell you that it won't help you. Stay in charge of your health care. Next slide. Mytesi is not associated with diarrhea constipation cycle because it normalizes the flow of salts and water instead of slowing the GI tract like other medicines do. So this graph kind of shows you the process. Stop the medication, diarrhea. Take the medication, constipation. Stop the medication, diarrhea. Take the medication, constipation. So this only works if you continue to take it on a regular basis. Over 98% of people taking Mytesi in the clinical studies did not report any constipation. And so that's good, because you don't want to just stop the diarrhea, because some of the things that the other two drugs do is it completely stops you from using the bathroom, period, which then causes more cramps and more problems. So we don't want to stop you from using the bathroom. We just want to make your life more manageable and more comfortable without those emergency runs when you're in the line at the grocery store and you have to run, and when you're in the car and you have to pull over, and sometimes you don't make it, and those are the embarrassing moments that happen, and we want to be able to talk about that, and we want to be able to share that information. Next slide. Mytesi acts directly on the GI tract. That's what we've been talking about the whole time. This drug works directly with the GI tract. It is minimally absorbed into the bloodstream, which means it doesn't travel through your whole body like most drugs do. In clinical studies, Mytesi did not interact with any of the antiretroviral therapy. And that's something that we want to make sure of. A lot of doctors and physicians won't want to change medications or add medications to your regimen in fear that it will interact with your antiretroviral therapy. This has been tested in clinical studies. Mytesi did not interact with any of those drugs. Mytesi also did not affect viral loads or CD4 counts. We know the viral load is the amount of virus that we have in our body, and we know that the CD4 is those little Indians that we have in our bodies that are fighting. And so it's important that we keep the Indians fighting, and it's important that we're able to keep the viral load down. And so Mytesi in clinical studies did not affect viral load, and that's really good. Next slide. Mytesi is just like I said, it's all natural. Mytesi is extracted and purified from the red bark sap of the Crochin leachiliri tree found in the Amazon rainforest. And so all of this wonderful medication is extracted and purified from a tree in the Amazon rainforest. And so, as I shared, the other two drugs have opiate bases in them, and we want to be very careful when we talk about those particular drugs. Brian, you want to say something?
No, I was just going to say, and thank you, Marissa, is that one of the things that people don't realize is it is quite a process to take a tree in the Amazon and somehow convert that into a pill that magically shows up at your Walgreens or your supermarket or wherever you pick up your medication. Before Mytesi gets to any patient, it actually crosses 3 continents. So there is processing done in 3 different continents before a patient can pick it up. It's an extremely complicated process, but the beautiful thing is, to your point, Marissa, is you have something that's not chemically made up in a laboratory. It's something that is produced by nature. It's something that has been not only tested in HIV population, right, but also been used by local healers or traditional healers for centuries in their own families and neighborhoods. So,
thank you, Brian. And also, Mytesi is used by traditional healers in the Amazon rainforest. They use the sap to treat a wide range of health conditions. They put it on sores, they put it on scrapes, and they see a faster paced healing. A fair trade, sustainable harvesting program with local and indigenous partners provides income generating opportunities for individuals, communities, and families. For every 1 tree harvested, at least 2 new trees are planted. Over 800,000 trees have been planted to date. Next slide, Dan. NAPO Cares. Listen, anytime we talk about drugs or we talk about medications, we always want to make sure that medications are affordable. It is so important that when we introduce medications to marginalized populations, that we make sure that they're affordable. NAPO Cares is a program that helps you save on purchasing the drug. The copay saving card, most patients will pay no more than $25 for their Mytesi prescriptions, and sometimes it can be lower than that. Eligible patients can save up to $6,000 per year on their copay with Mytesi. You see the little pay us little $25 card. We send that out when you enroll. Patient support programs. We identify and confirm coverage and benefits. So we work for you. We don't just ask you to figure out how to get on Mytesi. We do some of the work for you in the background. We help with understanding your insurance coverage. We help with the coverage or your insurance changes. We identify other sources of financial support to help you, such as governmental programs. We identify other sources of financial support if you are uninsured. And one of the most important things is that we want to make sure that if NAPO, if you start on this particular product, that you're able to sustain on this type of product through our NAPO Care program. So you can go to the website if you want more information and go to napocares.com. And when you pull it up, there'll be a lot of information where you can log in. There'll also be a 1-800 number where you can call someone and you can talk to someone directly. Next slide. So regain, experience the benefits of Mytesi. Next slide. So we talked about we have to realize, we have to relieve, and then we get our results. What we realize is that HIV-related diarrhea can result in damage of the GI tract. Once we realize that this is what we are dealing with, then we look for some relief. Mytesi works in the GI tract to target the cause of HIV diarrhea so that we can have relief. And then the results, unlike any other medication, Mytesi rarely causes constipation and has been studied in adults living with HIV. Next slide. We talked about this safety information in the morning, in the beginning of the presentation. Next slide. You don't just have to deal with diarrhea. Talk to your doctor about Mytesi. If you want to learn more information about Mytesi, please go to mytesi.com. Wealth of information. There are wonderful people. I've worked with a lot of them across country. If they're in an area that services you, they have their community liaisons. Erica is one of the community liaisons that works with NAPO. I've worked with Erica over decades, and Erica is a good person. So a lot of times, with pharmaceutical companies, we have this eerie feeling about we don't want to talk to them. Agencies don't want to let us come into your facilities. I am telling you that you can trust these two individuals. I have worked with Erica over a number of years. Now she introduced me to Brian. She told me Brian's a good guy. So I believe her when she tells me that Brian's a good guy. But if you want to learn more information about NAPO, all you have to do is go to mytesi.com. You can find a community liaison in your area. Next slide. Go ahead, Brian.
Oh, yeah, Marissa, I was going to say, I think one of the things that we hear oftentimes from patients is, I just figured this is normal, right? I just figured that this is my price for surviving when the virus has killed some of my friends and loved ones. And I just have to suck it up and deal with it. Matter of fact, maybe a doctor has told me that. Oh, it's not that bad. You remember the old days when you used to take really nasty medications and the diarrhea was uncontrollable and you couldn't leave the house? So maybe it's not like that anymore. But you know what? If I'm a chef, or if I'm an Uber driver, or if I'm a school teacher, just having uncontrolled or untimed diarrhea one time a day, one time a week, isn't really working for my life, right? I mean, if I'm in front of a customer and I have an accident, that's not going to work. And so it's really doesn't have to be, oh, I'm having diarrhea 20 times a week. Well, I'm not doing that like I used to. It's what's the impact on how I can do my job, how I can socialize? Do I avoid activities? Those are things that we shouldn't have to put up with in this modern era, in this modern age. And I know in the past we have had to put up with it. But really, the point being, it's okay to go and have an uncomfortable conversation maybe with your doctor and say, this isn't working for me and I need your help. And if someone came to you or me or anyone else asking for help and saying, I can't do this anymore, I really need your help, any decent human being would lend a hand. And so I think what's great about the march, and what's hopefully you guys will get to enjoy that throughout the week, is it's about empowerment. It's about standing up for yourself. It's about wanting the best life for yourself. That's what we all deserve. And so I can't thank you all enough for coming out. So if we have questions, Marissa and Erica and myself are happy to answer. Does anyone have any questions?
I don't think we have questions. I see a few comments. Thank you, Jody. Thank you, Aya. I see some of the comments. Thank you. Thank you, Bishop Keith McQueen. I think we just had some thank yous from people out there just thanking us for the information and saying very informative.
Wonderful.
And I just wanted to say, thank you so much, Marissa, for running on the GI consequences of HIV, and certainly Marissa and I do go back many moons, and I've been in roles of community liaison and as well as on the sales side, and I think the important thing to hopefully take away is even if this is not your own personal experience having this chronic diarrhea, understand that there may be someone that that does experience this. So use this information not only to educate yourself, but to educate and ideally empower another person, because we've all had diarrhea, whether it be eating some bad food or stomach flu or food poisoning, and it is a difficult experience, to say the least. And I remember actually a couple of years ago, Marissa and I got together and we went to some restaurant, and that was my problem at the end of the day. And but to deal with this on a regular daily basis, it has not only just an impact on in a physical capacity, but it also can impact somebody emotionally and mentally and spiritually, and also even sexually. I mean, Marissa talked about, not specifically intimacy, but just, when you're wanting to be intimate and be close with somebody, and if the fear or anxiety of, oh my gosh, what's going to happen, it totally interrupts the vibe, right? And, so with that, I say, if this is your experience, hopefully you feel equipped enough to have a conversation with your healthcare provider to say, this is what's been going on, and I realize I haven't told you because of whatever reason. Maybe I felt I wasn't going to be heard, or the last time I told you about it, you didn't take me seriously. But this is still happening, and I realize I should not be taking loperamide or loperamide or Imodium AD for months and years on end. Right? There's something out there, and I would like us to have a real conversation about other options, doctor. So,
and Erica, it becomes a way of living. I'll share with you, we've had several conversations throughout the years in this presentation, at least the last 3 years that NAPO has really been pushing Mytesi. We've had conversations with several individuals that Imodium AD has become a part of their regimen. So they take it every day, just to be prepared, or just to not have those embarrassing moments of being caught in public and not having sufficient bathroom accommodation. So absolutely.
Right, and certainly in today's, when you said accommodations, Marissa, in today's environment of COVID, and a lot of places where one would just easily bop into their local McDonald's or Burger King or Starbucks or wherever, you'll see a sign as no public bathrooms. So then what do? You soil yourself, which is humiliating. A bus driver is not going to let you get on the bus smelling like, fecal matter or having fecal matter, on yourself. And then, you just in talking about the Imodium, you mentioned it before about the diarrhea constipation cycle, right? And that is not pleasant in and of itself. I mean, you take the Imodium because you have the diarrhea, the Imodium, shuts it off to the point of constipation. Then you got to go to your local Walgreens to get something as for a stool softener to make you go. And then you go, and then it kind of resolves a little bit. Then you're back into the world of diarrhea, and this kind of end of the cycle. And your GI tract is saying, "Will this ever end?" Right? So,
and over a period, it's so much damage that you do to your GI tract, and so it's not just the diarrhea, the damage that comes from the constant diarrhea to your GI tract. So you don't have to go through diarrhea alone. It's something that you can talk to your provider about. Don't let your provider tell you what your tummy feels like. You know the difference between eating something bad and having gastro cramps. HIV and diarrhea are still things that are happening. The medication has gotten better, certainly from AZT and some of the other medications that came before, some of the better medications that were causing the constant diarrhea. it's still happening. So although we've gotten to a place that that medicine is better and it's helping us live, it still causes GI problems. And please don't be afraid to have a conversation with your provider. Or if you need somebody to have that conversation with you, with your provider, we want to be there for you to make sure that we can help you have that conversation with your provider as well.
Well, Marissa, you make a really great point too, is because a lot of people will think the medicines have gotten so much better. It's something you just have to put up with. It can't be that bad because the medicines are better. And what we talked about earlier is medicines can still cause diarrhea, but the reality of it is the damage that the HIV virus has done in the GI tract, because this is where our immune system lives. 70% of all your immune cells are in your GI tract. So if you have an suppressing or a virus that tries to beat up the immune system, where's it going to go? It's going to attack your stomach. Actually, it's one of the first places it attacks. And since we can't fully kill the virus, it stays in your system. So if you've had HIV for 20 years times 365 days times 24 hours a day, that virus has been in your gut beating you up. It has to damage people, right? It's just, and that's why we see people with enteropathy, we call it, when there's damage done. But that doesn't mean we have to put up with it. That's not okay, right? Because our life is too short. And I think what we've all learned from COVID is it's been a pretty crummy year. And we'd all love to get back out there and actually live a full life and have fun and enjoy ourselves. And I can't let diarrhea stop me. So thank you again, Marissa. You did a wonderful job. I really appreciate you.
Well, thank you, my colleagues. I will see you all. I will be in Chicago very soon, and we will get together. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Guys, if you have any questions, please go to mytessie.com. You can get all the information that you want to get from there. Or if you can't remember mytessie.com, there it is on the screen, mytessie.com. You can always reach me on my Facebook. You can always give me a call, and I'll put you in the right direction. And again, thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join us to talk about mytessie.
Thank you all.
Thank you.